Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come from this story. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead? Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole friend, and sole mourner. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood, years afterwards, above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge Scrooge, and sometimes Marley. But he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, hard and sharp as flint and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red. His thin lips blew and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to say with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. No children asked him what it was o'clock. Even the blind men's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on would tug their owners into doorways. But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting-house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy withal, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. The city clocks had just gone 3, but it was quite dark already. The fog came pouring in at every chink and keyhole, and was so dense without, the houses opposite were mere phantoms. The door of Scrooge's counting-house was open that he might keep an eye upon his clerk, who in a dismal little cell beyond was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so very much smaller that it looked like 1 coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal-box in his own room, wherefore the clerk tried to warm himself at the candle, but not being a man of strong imagination, he failed. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew. "Bah! Humbug!" "Christmas a humbug, Uncle! You don't mean that, I'm sure." "I do. Merry Christmas! What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough." "Come then, what right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough." "Bah! Humbug!" "Don't be cross, Uncle." "What else can I be, when I live in a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas! Out upon Merry Christmas! What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money, a time for finding yourself a year older but not an hour richer? If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with a Merry Christmas upon his lips should be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart, he should." "Uncle!" "Nephew, keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine." "Keep it? But you don't keep it." "Let me leave it alone, then. Much good it may do you. Much good it has ever done you." "There are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited. I dare say Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of in the long calendar of the year where men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as they really were, fellow passengers to the grave, and not just another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good, and will do me good, and I say God bless it." "You said something, Mr. Cratchit." No, sir.
Let me hear another sound from you, and you'll keep your Merry Christmas by losing your situation.
Uncle, don't be hard on Mr. Cratchit. It's my fault. Come, don't be angry. Dine with us tomorrow.
Dine? With you? I'd rather be roasted for the Christmas goose. Good afternoon.
But why, Uncle?
Why did you get married?
Because I fell in love.
Because you fell in love. Good afternoon.
Nay, Uncle, but you never came to see me before I was married.
Good afternoon.
Uncle, I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why can we not be friends?
Good afternoon.
I am sorry, with all my heart, to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel to which I have been a party. But I'll keep my Christmas humour to the last. So a Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Good afternoon. And a Happy New Year. Good afternoon.
His nephew left the room without an angry word, notwithstanding. He stopped at the outer door to bestow the greetings of the season on the clerk, who, cold as he was warmer than Scrooge, for he returned them cordially.
"There's another fellow," muttered Scrooge, who overheard him. "My clerk with 15 shillings a week, and a wife and family, talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam."
This lunatic, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let 2 other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood, with their hats off, in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands, and bowed to him. "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?"
"Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago, this very night."
"May we offer our sympathy?"
"Why? You're not relatives, are you?"
"No, but we feel sure you must be thinking of him at this time. And I am sure his generosity is well represented by his surviving partner. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute who suffer greatly at the present time. Don't you agree?"
"I take it you gentlemen are new to this district?"
"New and eager, sir. You will agree that many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds and thousands are in want of common comforts, sir."
"Are there no prisons?"
"Plenty of prisons, sir."
"And the Union workhouses, are they still in operation?"
"They are. Still, I wish I could say they were not."
"Oh, I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I'm very glad to hear it."
"Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude, a few of us are endeavouring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We choose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?"
"Nothing."
"You wish to be anonymous?"
"I wish to be left alone. Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there."
"Many can't go there, and many would rather die."
"If they would rather die, they had better do it, and decrease the surplus population."
"But you might know it."
"It's not my business. It's enough for a man to understand his own business, and not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, gentlemen."
The owner of one scant young nose, gnawed and mumbling by the hungry cold as bones are gnawed by dogs, stooped down at Scrooge's keyhole to regale him with a Christmas carol. But at the first sound of "God bless you, merry gentlemen, may nothing you dismay," Scrooge seized the ruler with such energy of action that the singer fled in terror. Scrooge resumed his labours with an improved opinion of himself. Meanwhile the fog and darkness thickened. The ancient tower of a church became invisible, and struck the hours and quarters in the clouds, with tremulous vibrations afterwards, as if its teeth were chattering. The cold became intense, piercing, searching, biting cold. At length the hour of shutting up the counting-house arrived.
"You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose?"
"If quite convenient, sir."
"It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound. And yet you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work."
"It's only once a year."
"A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier next morning. Mary, you were about to say something, Cratchit.
Nothing, sir. The clerk promised he would be prompt the next day, and quickly made his way out the door. On his way home, the clerk went down a slide on Cornhill 20 times in honour of it being Christmas Eve, and then ran home to Camden Town as hard as he could pelt to play at blind man's buff. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book, went home to bed. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms. Fog and frost hung about the black old gateway of the house. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door, except that it was very large. It is also a fact that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in that place. Let it also be borne in mind that Scrooge had not bestowed one thought on Marley since his last mention of his 7 years dead partner that afternoon. And then, let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look. As Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again. To say that he was not startled would be untrue, but he put his hand upon the key, turned it sturdily, walked in, lighted his candle, and closed it with a bang. He fastened the door, and walked across the hall and up the stairs. Up Scrooge went. Sitting room, bedroom, all as they should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa, nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet, nobody in his dressing gown. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in. Double locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus secure, he took off his outer garments, put on his dressing gown and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. Scrooge's glance happened to rest upon a bell that hung in the room. As he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing. It swung so softly in the outset that it scarcely made a sound, but soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house. This might have lasted half a minute, or a minute, but it seemed an hour. The bells ceased as they'd begun. Together. They were succeeded by a clanking noise, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound, and then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door.
It's humbug still, I won't believe it.
His colour changed, though, when, without a pause, it came on through the heavy door, and passed into the room before his eyes. Upon its coming in, the dying flame leaped up as though it cried, "I know him, Marley's ghost!" and fell again. The same face, the very same. Marley.
"How now? What do you want with me?"
"Much."
Who are you, sir?"
"Ask me who I was."
"Who were you, then?"
"In life I was your partner, Jacob Marley. You don't believe in me."
"I don't." "Why do you doubt your senses?" "Because a little thing affects them, a slight disorder of the stomach. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than grave about you, whatever you are. Humbug, I tell you, humbug!"
At this the spirit raised a frightful cry, and shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling. But how much greater was his horror, when the phantom, taking off the bandage around its head, as if it were too warm to wear indoors, its lower jaw dropped down upon its breast.
"Mercy, dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?"
"Man of the worldly mind, do you believe in me or not?"
"I do, I must. But why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?"
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow man, and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world. Oh, woe is me, and witness what I cannot share, but might have shared on earth, and turn to happiness.
You are fettered. Tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Do you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain.
Jacob, oh Jacob Marley, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob.
I have none to give. It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is all permitted me. I cannot rest, I cannot stay, I cannot linger anywhere. Oh, never to make amends for missed opportunities.
Jacob,
my spirit never walked beyond our counting-house. Mark me, in life my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole.
Jacob, I don't understand. Why are you suffering? All your life you were always a good man of business.
That's why I'm suffering. The suffering I caused others is being repaid.
Jacob, it was business.
Business! Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. At this time of the rolling year I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down, and never raise them to that blessed star which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes where its light would have conducted me?
You were always a good friend to me.
Hear me. My time is nearly gone.
I will, but don't be hard upon me.
How is it that I appear before you in a shape that you can see? I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many and many a day. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer.
Jacob, I thank ye.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob?
It is.
I think I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to escape your fate. Expect the first tomorrow, when the bell tolls 1.
Couldn't I take 'em all at once and have it over with, Jacob?
Expect the second on the next night at the same hour, the third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and for your own sake, you remember what has passed between us.
Scrooge raised his eyes and found his supernatural visitor walking backward from him towards the window. Following, he saw the air was filled with phantoms moaning. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Confused noises filled the air, incoherent sounds of lamentation and regret, wailings inexpressibly sorrowful and self-accusatory.
We spirits try to interfere for good in human affairs, but we have lost the power forever. That is the curse we bear.
Marley joined the mournful dirge and floated out upon the bleak, dark night. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double-locked, and the bolts were undisturbed. He tried to say, but stopped at the first syllable. And being, from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or his glimpse of the invisible world, or the dull conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, went straight to bed, without undressing, and fell asleep upon the instant.